Hello guys and welcome to a special video. Now today we're on the best class in the game, I mean the third Spec Gunslinger. Okay guys, so once you go on your Gunslinger, your skill setup should look like this and your talents should look like this. Now the talents are 3, 3, 2, 1, 2. That's basically the setup for Gunslinger, okay? Now over time, once you get experience with the class and you start to read through and understand each of these things, you will tend to make changes yourself. But the main setup for DPS is this, okay? So we're going to talk about these stances. So you have two different stances in Arsenal Gunslinger. You have the pistol stance, which is there to build up stacks. It doesn't do much damage. And you have the Arsenal stance, which basically is your damage, okay? You use up those stacks from your pistol stance, okay? Now, if you do have your soul badge and your badges, well, your soul badge will tell you that every time you use your tab, which is your stance switch, this basically gives you 350 boss attack power, okay? So over time, you will be switching stance very often to keep up this boss AP, okay? So yeah. Now let's talk about how to build up stacks. Now your basic skill, which is your RMB, LMB, whatever you have it set to, basically builds up stacks, and your V builds up stacks also. Your C is your bracelet, and your 3 is a knockback into a daze. Your 2 is a stun. Your C will pop up as an aerial, so if you're airing the boss by mistake and someone says that you are airing the boss, you can go to your K, look for upshot. Basically, that is the skill that is airing them. So you can look for level 33, I think. And there it is, level 32, upshot. That is the skill that is airing the boss, so you can disable it if it's bothering you, okay? So yeah. Now, your X basically is a shield. Your Z is Alpha Call. Now, Alpha Call gives you 5 stacks, and it also resets your skills. It also gives you 5 hooks as well, okay? Now, your 1 is your counter. Now, if you press 1 and press F, that's a knockdown, and that knockdown uses a hook, okay? Now, if you go close to the boss or to the target and you backstep, that is also a knockdown, okay? So you have 2 knockdowns, a stun, a knockback daze. Now, this is your stance switch, which is your tab. Your Q is a buff, okay? It gives you unlimited stacks for the duration, or it just gives you stacks every 0.0 seconds, okay? We're not going to talk about that right now. Your E is basically a iframe or movement skill. Your SS is basically backstep, okay? Your LMB or RMB, whatever you set it to, is basically reload, okay? So with all of that being said about pistol stance, let's talk about arsenal stance, okay? Now, once you go to arsenal stance, you will see a different set of skills. Now, your 3 skill, which is snipe, is basically a breaker skill, okay? So once you do that, you will see the breaker bar fill up. So that is your breaker skill, okay? Now, your 4 is triscope. This is a buff. So it is a long animation cast skill, so you have to use it wisely, okay? Your V is your main damage skill, which is called Machina, okay? So this skill is pretty much your bread and butter when we're talking about DPS. You're going to be using this skill a lot, okay? Now, your C is your bracelet, okay? Now, your C is also available in this stance as well. You'll see some of your skills available in the other stance as well. So yeah, your 1 in Arsenal is basically a block skill. So this is another option if you're in Arsenal stance and you need to block something. This is a useful block because it does stay longer than your pistol stance block, okay, or your counter. Your Z is basically your combo finisher, and it's basically a skill that gives you a buff as well. Okay, now once you use your triscope and your terminus skill, basically it will do a buff or a stack a buff, and this buff is basically a hologram doing the skills for you. So once you use either this skill 2 times, or this skill, then that skill, or that skill 2 times, you will get a buff where a hologram will do the skills for you. So let me show you an example. Okay, so I've used those skills twice. So now every time I use those skills, a hologram will be doing those skills for me, so I don't have to do it. Okay, so that is basically the Mirage buff or something like that. Okay, so yeah, one of the coolest thing about the class, to be honest. Okay guys, so I'm just going to be dividing this video into 3 parts. Basically the building up of these stacks, the using up of these stacks, and the burst. Now when you have simple mode on, you basically doing most of your regenerating of stacks with R&B. Okay, now the only skill that you need to press to really get more stacks in pistol stance is your V. This skill, when you press it, you see every hit gives you stacks. Okay, now this is how you get a lot of stacks really fast. Okay, instead of holding R&B, you can just use this skill to get a lot of stacks, and you're using up those stacks while you're generating. Okay, so if you have a bunch of mobs in front of you and you really need stacks, you can just use this, go into Arsenal, and then use up all of those stacks, and it will continue regenerating as it hits. Okay, so that is how you basically build up stacks. So just building up stacks, and once you have enough, you just switch. Okay, now there's something that you need to know before you go into Arsenal stance to use up those stacks. Okay, you need to activate your bracelet and your badge, your mystic badge. Okay, so when you hit C, your bracelet and your badge will activate. Okay, now when you hit render, it triggers the STARCROSS effect for 15 seconds, and when you hit render, which is your C, the same button, it triggers the Dawn Bright effect for 15 seconds. Okay, now this effect varies depending on the gear that you have. Now I do have the Dawn Bright Mystic badge, and I do have the STARCROSS bracelet, so it depends on the gear that you have, but this is how you trigger those items on your gunner. Okay, build up stack, switch, activate bracelet, use up those stacks, generate, change again, use my bracelet, and boom. Okay, now keep in mind, every time I go to Arsenal mode, I do get the 350 boss attack power. Okay, so that is something else that really adds to the damage. So every time you go Arsenal stance and you use your tab and you use your bracelet, you are getting buffs to really make this damage big. Also, with that being said, simple mode is using up these skills for you as well, so that really takes the pressure off pressing up a lot of buttons. Just remember to activate your bracelet and to switch very often. If you're in this stance, pistol stance, and you're just standing there, you will not do any damage. Okay, so with all of that being said, let's show you how to do your opener. Now, what basically is an opener? Your opener is how you start off the fight and how you deal that big damage. Now, at the start of the fight, that is where you're going to do the biggest damage basically in the fight. So you have to make sure you start good. So as a gunner, you want to make sure you activate your bracelet first, okay? So right before they start, you want to use your bracelet away from the boss, okay? So after you do that, you want to activate your buff skill. So this is where your Q come into play. Your Q skill basically gives you a lot of stacks, and this is really OP. This is where all of your bursts, your CC immunity, and all of that jazz comes from. So when you activate this skill, you will constantly regenerate stacks while you're in this mode, okay? See, I'm using up these stacks and I'm regenerating. Now once that leaves the field, you stop getting stacks, okay? Now one thing about this skill that is really great is that once you're in here, you cannot be CC'd, okay? So that is really great. Also, once you exit, you don't get these stacks. So once you hit Q, you do get the 350 boss attack power as well, so that is really good. Okay, so let me show you how to do the opener. Okay, use up these stacks. Now regenerating, switch, use the bracelet, regenerate stack, activate your bracelet, regenerate stack, change your bracelet. So that is pretty easy right there. Now that is pretty easy right there. It all comes down to how often you practice your opener, and you will become perfect at it one day. Now let's talk about how to incorporate Alpha Call into your DPS rotation. Now Alpha Call is a really powerful skill. This resets all of your skill as well as Sky Cell, and this really makes your burst super OP. You can 2x burst on any boss, so this is really good. Now keep in mind, you have to know when to use this, okay? Because certain boss fight, the boss fight will be longer. So if you use your Alpha Call early, you will get it again before the boss fight is over. Or a certain boss fight is too short where you won't be able to get a full reset, because keep in mind the cooldown is 5 minutes, okay? Now what I normally do is sometimes I burst, and then after the burst I use my photon fall, okay? So I'm just going to be showing you an example of that now, okay? So I'm going to use my photon fall to build the gap. Now when my soul does return, that's when I actually use Alpha Call, okay? Now there's different ways you can incorporate Alpha Call into your combos. This is really up to you and when is the best time to use this. Now sometimes what I do is, if I have Soulburn in the party, I normally just use my buff and then DPS down and wait until Soulburn comes around again, because keep in mind, once you use Alpha Call, this will lose timing of your talisman, okay? So if you use Alpha Call basically 20 seconds after you use this, you will be behind on your talisman and you will be behind on Soulburn. So when Soulburn does come back in your party, this will be on cooldown. So sometimes I wait until another Soulburn and then I use Alpha Call right after, so I can get 2 bursts with Soulburn, then use my Alpha Call and get another burst afterwards. But it all depends on how you like to play. That is just what I do now and then. Sometimes I use Alpha Call during Soul Burn so I can use Awaken Triscope more than once, but it all depends on how you like to play the class. Okay, so the first tip is how to do damage on a quick KD. So basically, if you have a Blade Master or a Blade Dancer in your party that knows how to knock down the boss at the start, and you want to do a quick burst on the boss to take advantage of this, basically you can activate your bracelet, activate Sky Cell, and basically animation cancel your Sky Break with Triscope. Both of them will hit at the same time. Now the thing is, if you're doing CSC 5 runs or a grab run of CSC 5 or a boss that will die quick time before you get hit, you can use the Overcrank talent. Now what this does, it gives you more damage during your Sky Cell. But the thing is, if you get hit, you will not regenerate stacks and your DPS will plummet like big time. So the thing is, when you use this talent, if you get hit, you will not get stacked, and I'm telling you, your DPS will drop big time. Like your DPS will drop by 3/4. So it is very risky. So if you're gonna get hit, you can use your shield to prevent you from losing stacks. So this is really good. Okay, or if you have a grab in the party and you're sure that you're not gonna get hit, you can use that, but I will not recommend using this for regular runs. It is not safe. Now keep in mind, I do sometimes switch to Hyper Sniper, and this is for burst run only and shard fights such as CSC 5 runs. Okay, so if I want to do a quick burst on the boss is gonna die in like 5 seconds, I sometimes switch to this. So that is why you see me doing 700 million burst there, because I'm using this talent and the Overcrank. But if you actually have a CC target, the damage will be extremely high. Okay, so that is something to note. And I also have the one shot talent on. Now the one shot talent, basically it does a big damage on your Sky Break, but it only hits one time. So that is another reason why I'm doing this big damage. Now I do run this setup when I'm doing CSC 5 again. So yeah, but on a regular basis, I just stick with this. This is the spec that you use on a regular basis. Anyways guys, thank you for watching this video. Like, share, and subscribe, and goodbye.